Welcome to episode 209 of the Daniel Yoris podcast with today's guest, Michael Tzemis. Let's go. Welcome back to the podcast, everybody. Today, we are joined by the one, the only, the legendary Michael Tzemis. Michael, thanks for being here, buddy.
Of course. Super happy to be here. Finally.
Finally. In a slightly sarcastic way, we are here today to talk about how amazing you are.
Oh, okay.
Admittedly, best athlete in the family, arguably best style or fashion in the family.
Yeah.
Currently, definitely the most lean, and that is what is most relevant to today's discussion. But go ahead and quickly just introduce yourself, and then we'll kind of get into it.
Yeah. Well, obviously, my name is Michael, one of the cousins of Daniel. We have quite a bit in being a Greek family, but really just here to kind of talk about the journey I've had over the last year, and not even the last year, but also like even the last 5 years of my life. I've learned quite a bit about fitness and what works, and kind of the longevity aspect of things, and I've also seen a lot of people go through different sort of transformations as well. But I think my story is pretty interesting, and kind of getting from super skinny to out of shape, and now, the physique I've always kind of dreamed of, and kind of the lessons in between. So, super excited.
Exactly. So we're going to kind of talk about, again, just like you said, your transformation over the last year and all the things, in the previous years that led up to that, because it's not just like you just flipped the switch and decided to be in fitness. Like, you're always an athlete, always in shape and all that stuff, but, you really kicked it up over the last year. And so we'll go through all the things that you did, what worked, what didn't work, things you tried in the past and all that kind of stuff. And then I was just telling you right before we recorded, but I'll just say it now, that I'll kind of interject at various points throughout as I'm asking you things, and say like, hey, this thing that you were doing, whatever it is, worked great for you, but maybe it might not work the same way or as ideal for the listener. And I'll kind of interject in those at those times and provide like some alternatives, or explain maybe a little bit of like the physiology of like why that thing may or may not work for a given person. And we'll go through that. But so these are the things that work for you. So I think to start going through this, tell us where you're at now, as far as physique wise, if you want to, stats, body fat percentage, like all that kind of stuff. And then we'll start going through systematically how you got there.
Yeah. So, as far as body fat goes, I measured last week. I'm at 9.5%. As far as like goals going, when I started this, I was pretty out of shape, and I kind of just wanted to get, even to that like 12 to 13%, even 15%, because that's still pretty good.
And what does out of shape mean? Like where did you start from?
I started from like right now I'm weighing in at 178, 180, in between there, about 5'11", and I started at like 235. About
you were 235? No,
yeah, I was big. Yeah.
I must have been when I didn't see you for a bit.
Yeah, I didn't leave the house too much. But I was big.
Yeah.
I was big. We're pretty like, people say this, but as you know, like we do have big bones. Our genetics, like they are very, very thick bones. But me actually less than Peter and Anthony. But I was big, man. I was like very out of shape, and again, being that out of shape, especially because I was pretty sliced before that, but a different type of slice than I am now. It's the aspect of things is much different, and my view on just food, alcohol, working out, everything is so different now, which we can dive into. But yeah, I was really big, and just getting like, obviously being 230, even getting to 200 would have been like, okay, this is amazing. But yeah, that's where I am now, and that's where I started. And that was so I was 230. It was like October last year. That was
October the year before, like 2023 October, not 2024.
2023 October, yeah.
Yeah. So let's act like, how did you get to that point? Because that's not your normal walking around weight. Like that's probably the heaviest you've ever been, right? Yeah, like that's not normal for you to be up there. So what happened that you got there?
Well, it actually started, I'm sure most people have this kind of excuse or whatever, but it did start during COVID. Obviously things changed, no gym. life kind of like hit everyone like a truck basically. And I think the biggest thing that kind of hit me was the fact that I couldn't go anywhere and do anything. And I think the mindset, maybe for a lot of people too, was like, oh, I'm not going to see anyone. Like we were literally locked in our house. Being in Toronto, Canada, like we were like had the worst of it. We were locked in our house, literally could not leave the house. So I think like the mindset for a lot of people, this is at least for myself, is I'm not going to see anyone. And, this is kind of a very weird time. Like as nothing happens right away, you slowly start to stop moving as much and you can't go anywhere. So that's a factor. Although everything's a choice, that was kind of the thing for me. Started eating not good. And then it kind of just got to a point where, you started adding in like, oh, it's like 2 to 3, even a month later, you're still not leaving the house. All right, well, maybe I'll start drinking a little bit, I'm not doing anything, no work to get to, no dates to get to, nothing like that. Right. So at the end of the day, I just, started drinking. And then I think actually the drinking aspect of things is what led to more eating and then more drinking. And then, it's just like a habit. Everyone has a habit in life. I do believe that you can wake up, smoke and go do whatever you want. That could be your habit, or you could wake up and go get, a 10-minute walk in. Right. So I think just my habit shift changed from, where I was before to just basically nothing. I kind of went in to like an all in or all out personality. But yeah, that's kind of what got me to that.
Fair enough. I mean, I think that or a similar story to that is probably extremely common, especially through COVID, and highlighting all the things that you said there, and even more for those of us in Toronto and the GTA, because it was pretty rough here for a long time. So then let's fast forward a little bit. What got you out of that, and how did you start to go on this, like October of whatever 2023? What happened in the weeks or months leading up to that, where it's like, okay, now it's time to take this seriously?
Yeah, I mean, one of the biggest things I've learned over the last year is like a lot of people wait for like a perfect moment to start, whether it's a job, whether it's fitness or whatever. But there's actually no secret sauce, as you know. You just start. You just like that's when you're ready, is when you make that first. Okay, today I'm going to do 10 minutes of like weights, basically, right? And then you build from there. So for me, that's kind of like the biggest thing that kind of started all this, was just starting. But the biggest change that happened was moving to Colombia, Medellin. I think I saw this on one of the recent podcasts you had, but there was a pyramid and the guy was talking about environment being like one of the biggest things. And that has been like a huge shift for me. Like environment, personally, I think is everything. I really do. I really think surrounding yourself with the right people, but even just like a scenery change, because there's a lot of triggers as people have, right? There's a lot of triggers that people have. Even when I go home now, like I still have triggers of my room and being in the basement and eating these certain things, and just like the person I was in my house, right? Nothing to do with my family. My family's perfect, but me, myself, my relationship with my house are just like the triggers that are around there, right? So, and Hermosi talks about this. It's like, if you just take away the triggers, if they're just not there, it makes it a lot easier overall. So ended up moving down here. Peter and Anthony, my 2 other brothers, they are down here. They were already down here, so it made it a little bit easier. But that was a huge thing for me, was making that shift and not having those triggers in the environment anymore. And that's kind of like the biggest thing that, I mean, I made it in my brain to like start. I did a couple of days of workouts before that, before I left. But I would say the biggest thing is that environment change for sure, and making my way out here.
Makes sense. I mean, obviously that's a gigantic shift, and like that's not reasonable for a lot of people to just get up and move countries, and depending on what stage of life you're at and how old you are, and the type of job that you have and all that stuff. Now, luckily for you, that was feasible. But what are some things, if you can identify, outside of like the physical space that you're in, and like the scenery, the climate, those kind of things that like you could change in like that if you were at home? What were some of the things that you would be able to change or try to manipulate? Just if you can identify for some other people, things that would make it a little bit easier to eat a little bit healthier, get a little bit more exercise in, those kind of things.
Yeah, I mean, overall, it's always a choice. I think the biggest thing that probably like messes with people is like thinking that, okay, I'm going to do this for like a certain amount of time, right? I'm going to go on like a diet per se, and then I'll be where I want to be. Or they do like, oh, I'm going to get in shape for this like event, like a wedding or like a party or something. When like, I do think like if you actually like just take yourself out of that and put it in a frame of like, I need to do this for the rest of my life. Like this is not something that's short term, right? I think that's big. And that was a huge lesson I learned is like, okay, so I'm no longer like, cause I used to do this when I was like kind of skinny and had like eating disorders before I got out of shape, was like, okay, I'm like going to go really hard for like 2 weeks or like a month and like not eat that much and like do a shitload of cardio and whatever. And I'll look good for this event. But then after that, it's like, there's no regimen, there's no routine, there's no relationship with food. And I think that's it as well, as like people don't realize like you do have a relationship with everything. You have a relationship with drinking, you have a relationship with sleep, you have a relationship with food, and how you view those relationships are also going to dictate how you treat them. Right. So I think the perspective shift is big on that aspect of having a proper relationship with things, and also just understanding that I do think diets are a myth. If you're getting into fitness and you're trying to get in shape because you want to look good for this event, or you want to do it for 2 weeks or like 2 months, I don't think you'll win. I think you'll fall back again, because fitness at the end of the day, like it should be something people view as like a lifelong thing, right? I mean, we do live, however long we live, but again, it's never going to be something that's going to be a longevity thing if you don't view it as a longevity thing, right? I think that's a big thing. So I think it's just perspective, really.
I totally agree with that. I mean, I've always said fitness is a forever game. You don't just you don't just eventually win. You're like, okay, like I'm done like working out and eating healthy. Like I'll just go back to doing other stuff now. Like it doesn't work like that, fortunately or unfortunately. I think that a lot of people will get into fitness or start taking care of their health with the catalyst of I got to prepare for this wedding, or I got to prepare for vacation, or it can be something that like gets the ball rolling. And it's fine to have like short-term goals along the way, shorter midterm goals, but you still have to keep the big picture in mind. And that is, I'm going to do this for the rest of my life. And so you can have periods of pushing a little bit harder and kind of taking your foot off the gas a little bit, where you want to tighten up for a vacation or something like that, but it's not disordered, it's not excessive, and it has like a finish line. And then the most important thing that you were referring to there is that it has a plan for what to do after the quote unquote diet is done, right? Anyone can do a 4-week diet and like, hammer in on their macros and like do 80,000 steps a day. Like anyone can do that for 4 weeks, but then what do you do after that? That's the thing that matters the most. And the fact that you did that and have kept it up for a period of time now is a good testament to that.
Agree.
So let's start to get into some of the more technical things here. You had worked out and dieted and stuff like before all that weight gain, and then moved to Colombia, and then you're there. You decided, okay, I'm going to do this for the rest of my life. What did you start doing? Where did you actually start? Was it nutrition, training, and then we'll dive into like the more specifics of what you actually did?
Yeah, great question. I personally think that like I know people say like eating is like 80%, 80-20 rule. And I definitely think there's an 80-20 rule, but I do think that obviously it depends on where you are in life. Like if you're 230 and you want to get like shredded, that's a difference. If you want to just lose 10 pounds, it's a difference. But I think overall, if we're in the realm of like getting in very good shape, I do think that, and this is how I started, is I started walking a lot. I didn't do any workouts because I knew that if I'm really going to do this, I need to like kind of piece it by piece. I can't just like throw everything on myself at once, because it's probably not going to last. Like it is a lot to the body, especially when I was basically sitting for like 13 hours a day, drinking beer and playing Fortnite, like everyone else in COVID, right? So I thought maybe just like slowly like adding things. Like there's I think it was a Joe Dispenza thing where he said like instead of adding like 3 habits at once, do one habit for a week or a week and a half, and then add another habit on top of that. And then it just slowly builds. So basically I started by walking a lot because it's obviously very good for overall health, but it's also not like super stressful. You're not like, not getting super hungry from it. And it does actually solely burn fat when you do that, right? It doesn't reach into anything else, which is pretty cool. But I started at that with the actual working out aspect of things, but I really dialed in the food. So for like 3 weeks, there's no cheating. There was no like nothing. It was just, let me eat clean. Let me like get that in order. Let me get that like eating change down packed, because I do believe that's a very difficult thing, especially now in life where like obviously everything is accessible all the time, right? Like McDonald's, Uber it, done, easy, cheap. Like it's just so easy, right? So I think that was where I started, was just getting the eating in order, moving more. And then once I felt good about my eating and it was clean, I didn't really feel like I had temptations, or you start to get in that realm of like, okay, I feel good now. Like this is my new routine. Like it's obviously not solidified, but this is sort of who I'm becoming. So that's where I started for sure. I think it's the most important.
I'm glad you said that, and I didn't know that about that. Like walking was kind of the first thing that you went to, and personally, I'm also a big fan of this for two things, and it's something that I've spoken about before, but it's worth reiterating here. Is that we very quickly look to like losing weight in and of itself is a negative term. Like losing is negative, and so you're trying to like remove body fat and lose weight and whatever, but we also want to make this like a positive experience. And I think that there is like some power in words, and this may be a little bit, esoteric, a little bit out there for some people, but doing a positive action like walking, like I'm going to go out and I'm going to walk, I'm going to do something, is something to help get the ball rolling and feel better about yourself, rather than thinking that all I have to do to lose weight is just take away food, and I have to take away my McDonald's, take away beers, take away stuff. Well, what can you add as well that's also going to be like a positive force into this? So that, as like just a principle, I think is extremely powerful. And then second, that you also mentioned that it's extremely accessible, low impact, like very easy to do. Like anyone can go outside and walk for 5 minutes, or get a walk. Like here in Toronto, if in Canada or wherever it's snowy, I mean, you can have boots and a winter jacket, but you can get a walking pad. They're like maybe $200. Like they're not terribly expensive. They're pretty convenient, and you can just like get steps easily inside. So it's very accessible for a lot of people, and it's going to start to move the needle, start to make you start to feel better about yourself, that you're taking a positive action towards things, as well as starting to dial in the food. So before we talk about more of the nitty gritty about nutrition, because that will probably be a little bit longer, did you have any sort of like, were you trying to hit a certain amount of steps per day, times of the day, amount of times, like number of walks per day? What was did you think about this a lot, or did you just kind of like move more and that was it?
Yeah. In the beginning, I would say the first 2 weeks, it was actually just more about just doing it, instead of like worrying about the logistical things, and tightening those up. Cause even at that point where I was, like, just doing it was tough. Like, look, being fully transparent in all ways, and I'm sure people feel this way, but when you are like that out of shape, especially when you're someone who, was very good, like a very good athlete and very like active my whole life, it doesn't feel good, right? Your mindset is bad. You don't feel good by yourself, and that's a block. So just getting outside and getting like an hour in is usually what I would hit. Not sure how many steps that was, probably like 6,000-7,000, but I wasn't too focused on logistical. I was just focused on like winning the mindset, like winning the mind battle more than anything else. Cause you can always tighten up the logistical things. You can add more, you can change things up. But I do think like just getting it in is much more important. And not to mention walking in general is extremely good for mental health. Like just being outside and that clarity, like, and you only know if you do it. Like if you actually do walking consistently, like, we can talk about this more, but when I was in Greece, like I'd never have walked more in my life, and I've never been more mentally clear, like ever, more than I am now. So there's also that too, right? The mental clarity aspect of things.
Would you do it in the morning, and would you do it all in one shot? Like, would you go for an hour walk all at once, or would you like do 2 times 30 minutes, or how would you
I would usually spread it out. I wouldn't do it all at once, because I think like if you're going to start moving, I think it's better to kind of sporadically do it throughout the day. Cause also like if you do it all at once, I found that like, okay, I did an hour walk today, I'm done. Right. I think like if you do like, sure, you plan to do like a 20-minute walk in the morning, and then you plan to do a 20-minute walk later, but then something comes up and you got to walk further. Right. You kind of get a little more in. So you put yourself in that situation. So it was more sporadic. Cause also like working in the online space, like I'm sitting for my job. Right. So it was better to do that. Yeah.
Yeah. Agreed with that. And this is one of those things that it's like not scientifically accurate, but practically speaking, it's extremely beneficial, where like 60 minutes of walking, like weight loss comes down to calories in and calories out. And there's a lot of other things that go into that, obviously. But 60 minutes of walking in a row is going to burn the same amount of calories as 3 times 20 minutes of walking.
Yeah.
However, practically speaking, you're going to be thinking about it more often. You're more likely to make better choices in between those shorter walks, because just exactly like you said, you do 60 minutes of walking in the morning and you're like, okay, I'm done. I did my exercise. Now I can like eat like an asshole the rest of the day. Like I can just kind of fuck off and do whatever. And you might not do that, but it's easier to slip into that, knowing that, hey, I've got another walk set later today. Is like, okay, I'm still kind of stoking the fire and keeping this going. It's more on my mind and more just part of who I am.
Yeah.
The other thing with that is like walking itself, if you do it inside in a dark room, is going to be beneficial to you. But walking outside and being outside in the air is a whole another realm of benefits, like you were saying, about the mental clarity and fresh air. And I mean, unless you're, downtown Toronto, not a lot of fresh air, more like just car exhaust and sewers. But but being, somewhere else is definitely more beneficial to that. So good. So we got the walking down. Anything else that you wanna say on that? You expanded that over time and started doing a little bit more, I assume.
Yeah, I mean, I think I started walking more. But once I got like the routine down and I was actually in a much better headspace of like, okay, we're rolling now. Like let's use this as like a way to, continue to move forward. Then I started adding like actual workouts in, right? Because there's also things that come from that as well. Obviously, it's extremely important to lift weights and all these different things. And you know how much I love weights. But I actually did start with weights. I did start with
that's very sarcastic for everybody listening. Michael loves fitness and exercise, but doesn't actually like lifting weights. He's more on the calisthenics side of things. But
I'm learning to love it more now. We'll get into that. But I did start with weights. Is where I kind of added about three to four workouts a week of just weights. Obviously, this is different because it's not like I was someone who never worked out before in their life. Like I was extremely active before that. So getting back into like a 4-day weight routine was easier for me. Right.
Sure.
So for someone who's, obviously starting out who hasn't worked out that much, I would probably suggest maybe like 2 days a week or 3 days a week, at 30 minutes each just to build some momentum. But for me, just even when I went once, I was like back at the kind of that, like I was like addicted, like going to the gym. It's like, although I was out of shape and very uncomfortable and self-conscious, like it is an addictive thing, I do think. So that's
and because you did it before, it still brings back like good feelings, good memories. This is what it feels like to feel good. Like this is what I'm supposed to feel like. Right?
So, yeah, exactly.
Yeah. And you knew what you were doing as well, right? I'm sure you followed pretty like relatively basic workouts, and maybe we'll talk about the in depth of the workouts in a little bit. I don't want to jump around too much, but I don't want to miss the nutrition because I know there's going to be more there than on the training side of things. So let's go there now. Start with the walking and started cleaning up your nutrition, as you said. What does that mean? I think it's more or less obvious what that means, but like just define it very clearly.
Yeah. So for me, like eliminating alcohol was big. Obviously, if you are trying to lose weight and you're trying to get in that space, in that headspace, the elimination of alcohol was great because obviously when you drink, there's more temptations to eat. It's obviously not good for you because you have to burn off the alcohol before the fat and stuff like that. So cutting out drinking was huge. I mean, I lost weight from doing that in general, right? So that was the first thing. And then I was kind of like thinking like, what can I do so it sticks, right? Not so that it doesn't feel good when I'm like restricting myself from like losing, right? That negative perspective on it. So I did a bunch of research on different things. And for me, like intermittent fasting has always been easy. And I've always loved it. Even when I was like super out of shape and eating terrible, I was kind of still intermittent fasting. I was still not eating till 4 o'clock every day. Right. But then I would just obviously eat so much food,
which is a good thing to notice. Just to interject there is that like intermittent fasting like may or may not be a good strategy, and I've talked about it a number of times here. Different for different people and what you've got going on and all that stuff. But it in itself is not magic, like you just said. Like you can be intermittent fasting and still eating like junk and gaining weight. So just to kind of highlight that, but continue.
Exactly. So I just went back to like the roots of just the intermittent fasting because it did really work for me. Mainly like Greg Gallagher Kino Body. Like that's where the first routine is I just got on the movie star body because, I sold for him. I believe in it. It made more sense for me to run with. And yeah, it was just more of like personally just an easier program to follow if you're going to follow something. It's not as intense. It's not killing yourself in the gym 6 days a week, doing a shitload of cardio like I used to. So I kind of just gave it a chance. And the eating aspect of things was just intermittent fasting. So I wouldn't eat about 6 to 7 hours from like after I woke up. I would break my fast with like, I think it was like 4 eggs and some vegetables, and I think that was it. And then I don't remember. It was actually so long ago. I'm trying to like think back of like to what it was. But at dinner we have obviously Juan here, so it is a little bit easier. But for dinner I would have a big feast. I would have like pretty big piece of protein. So they're like chicken, steak, fish. It was mainly sirloin. I'd probably have like 400 grams of sirloin, and then big portion of potatoes and vegetables basically. And that was it for me. To be honest, I was hitting about like, I'd say like 2,300 calories a day. I would say 2,400 a day at that time.
And you'd stick to those 2 meals, only those 2 like real meals per day.
Yeah, I would only eat 2 meals, and that works for me. Like I didn't feel like I needed more. I think the big feast was just like something I looked forward to every day, and it wasn't super restrictive, which was great. So, right. Yeah.
Any snacks that you would have throughout the day?
At the time, no. And this is still where I was like building my relationship with food back up, because fast forward or going back to like before I was out of shape, my relationship with food was like just horrid. So, and working out, like pretty much everything.
You've referenced that a couple of times. Like what do you mean by that? Your relation, like in your own definition, in your own experience, what was your relationship with food?
So it was very restrictive. I mean, after I stopped playing like hockey, basically, where like that realm of sports, like 3 or 4 different sports stopped, I got very obsessed with getting shredded, like just very obsessed. And it wasn't like, oh, let's get healthy. It was like, okay, let's just like look good on the outside, right? That's kind of what it was for me. And what that meant and what I thought it meant was like, okay, I'm going to do literally like 30 to 40 minutes of cardio every day. And I would do calisthenics every day. This is 7 days a week. And then I would probably eat, like I was probably eating like, full transparency, I was probably eating like 1,500 calories a day, every day with no carbs. Right. And that's,
and I remember that.
Yeah. And it got me like pretty shredded. Like I was definitely like lean, but I was also like super skinny, and energy was terrible. Testosterone is probably pretty low, I'm assuming at that point, because you're not eating anything, and I wasn't lifting weights either. So, and I just got super obsessive, and yeah, it was just, everything was, I look good on the outside, sort of. I was pretty skinny, but just my eating, and I actually developed an autoimmune disorder from that. Luckily it wasn't anything serious, but yeah, just like that whole relationship with just like super restrictive and so much extra stuff, just to like look good on the outside. Right. Which is obviously not maintainable, and 1,500 calories a day is ridiculous. So
yeah. for an adult male, for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. So then obviously that didn't hold up, and then we fast forward to where we are now. So intermittent fasting, kind of having like eggs and veggies, which is like not a gigantic meal, but like a solid breakfast, and then like a bigger meal at dinner.
Yeah, big meal. Yeah.
Were you tracking your macros in any way? Like you said, just because you said like 400 grams ish of like steak or something like that, were you tracking it diligently, or did you just kind of eyeball it? How did you go about that?
In the beginning, I was tracking it more, because I've done it. I did it for so long already before that. I kind of can eyeball things more now, and even before. But in the beginning, I actually think it is important to do that for anyone. I think it's something useful. Like it's a useful skill to be able to, even like if you're going out to dinner and you like don't know how much you're having, like at least you're smart enough to know, okay, I've seen this before, sort of like, let's just kind of rough estimate around what this is. And also it's kind of like a game you play with yourself when you're trying to get in shape, where okay, I'm plugging in my macros now. Like it's something I do. It's like a little fun thing. I had this. Okay, this is how much it was. And it's kind of like a fun thing you can add. Instead of looking at it as like a chore, you can look at it as like, okay, this is a fun thing I'm doing now, right? It's almost like a self-report on myself for the day.
It's that's a good mindset shift, because a lot of people will just think of it as a chore, and if you think of it negatively, like, oh, I have to like report my macros to this app. Like you're just a slave to this app and these numbers, rather than trying to like think of it positively, like, oh, how much protein can I get in today? Like, can I stay within my carb limits and my fat limits for the day? And how did it make me feel when I ate this, or how did it make me feel when I ate that? And so I'm a big fan of it as well, and just tracking macros for at least a period of time because of the awareness, like you're saying, or the education, rather, like you're saying, and then also the awareness of, like, it just forces you to, like, actually pay closer attention to what you're eating. And if you're new to eating quote unquote clean or trying to lose weight or whatever, it's going to help a ton, because more awareness and more education and more knowledge is only going to benefit you.
For sure.
Did you have a specific macro split roughly that you were going, or like a certain amount of protein, carbs, fats? Was there anything that you did specifically there, or as long as your total calories were in check, you were good?
I was focusing mainly on protein and calories at that point. So I was trying to hit like at least like 180, 170 grams protein a day. And then calories at probably calories was main, but 2,400 to 2,500 a day. Because at that point, obviously I was much heavier. So even that was a pretty good deficit. So, yeah.
Right. And that's, I'm very happy that you said that, because people who are listening to this who are like 150 pounds, like, you're probably not going to be losing weight on like 24, 25, or even 2,300 calories a day. It's just when you are bigger, you have more calories to work with, and therefore you can eat more and still be at a deficit. This is just math. This is just the way that it goes.
Yeah. It's all relative.
And exactly. And so don't be thinking that, someone else's numbers are not your numbers. But it is important to, again, to highlight that, hey, you're making sure that you're hitting your protein. And from a physiological perspective, like, it doesn't matter whether you're how much necessarily carbs and fats you're eating, so long as your total calories are within a deficit range. Mm-hmm. And so, helpful to people, again, to say that, like, hey, you didn't need to track those specific, obviously you track them, but you're not saying like, oh, I can only have like 75 grams of carbs. Like, maybe some days were a little bit higher carb, some days were a little bit lower carb,
sure.
But as long as your calories were where they should be, then it doesn't matter. And all of the science supports this as fact anyways. So that's solid. So what are you doing now? You keep saying that, like, this is what you were doing. What are you doing now? Obviously you're not trying to lose weight anymore at this point. You're just more maintenance. What is your nutrition like right now?
So one thing that really shifted for me when I was in actually Greece, because my sister got married this year in August, and I actually ended up staying in Greece for 4 months by myself. And this is where, like, a lot of things changed for me, because I still, like, even though I was still in that in August, I was not where I am now, but I was in pretty good shape for the wedding and stuff. But I still had this, like, lingering, like, fear of eating. There was a little bit still there. And that was still kind of a problem for me, because it is a really tough thing to deal with when you're, like, obviously you need to eat food every day. And then when your relationship is kind of weird with food, it's on your mind. So you start, I think I was slipping back into that obsessive a little bit. So what shifted for me was just giving it a chance to, like, just eat, move as much as possible and eat. As of right now, I think we talked about this like a month ago. I don't really have like a regimen right now. Probably my only regimen is boxing. I've kind of fallen in love with it. I really enjoy not so much the fighting aspect of things, but that's just like a healthy consequence of boxing as much as I do. But just the cardio and just the sweat and I don't know, the punching. I don't know. There's something about it that just kind of gets me going, and it's like it feels good, right? But I try and box like at least like 3 or 4 times a week. And then for the rest of it, I mean, I'll kind of just do whatever. One day I'll do hot yoga. That's something I've really liked. It's just this sweating that much, and it's very good for cardio, and it's just a change, right? It's also not super like it's not killing myself. I'm not doing like crazy amounts of cardio, whatever, and it's just different. Mm-hmm. So do hot yoga like once or twice a week. Usually probably once. Minimum 10K steps a day. That's always been a thing. I'm probably hitting more towards that 12,000 a day. Again, I look at it more as like a mental health thing at this point. It's not so much for fitness. So again, that's a healthy consequence. But yeah, I would say on a weekly basis, it's really just 3 to 4 days of the week. I'm boxing for like 45 minutes. Maybe add a little like circuits, weights, and abs, and like calisthenics. I'll do hot yoga once a week, and 10K steps a day, and then even golfing. I golf on Saturdays, and I'm gonna hit like 18,000 steps just from the golf because we walk here, right? Like, that in itself that's a lot of calories burned. But it's just, again, it's not a fitness thing; it's just moving. So that's kind of my regimen for working out right now, and yeah.
Yeah, I'm happy you said that, because working out doesn't have to equal burning calories, and I think people make this mistake all the time. And this is where the exercise part, like, back to that like positive negative thing, it becomes punishment. Like, exercise isn't about burning calories. Exercise does burn calories, but like, so does everything else that you do. Like, you go and walk from your couch to the fridge, like that burns. You might burn 1 calorie doing that. Like, but everything you do burns calories. You know what I mean? So the point of exercise is not to burn calories. The point of exercise is to the good mental health benefits, build muscle, build strength, build endurance, learn a skill, boxing, golf, whatever, have fun. Like, these are all the points of exercise, and like, burning calories is, maybe the 8th best thing about, about exercise kind of thing. Now, on the training side of things, because you referenced before that you did start training with weights, which is not your exact preference. Why did you lean that way? And why do you think that that is an important way to go?
The non-weights?
No, lifting weights. You decided to lift weights, even though it's not your like favorite thing.
Yeah. I've been mixing it. You mean the beginning, or you mean now?
The beginning.
The beginning. I just think I was so lost at that point, and I think weights is kind of an easy like thing to shift to, because the movements are not like super like, you don't have to complicate them with like crazy different like squat things and bench presses and different things like that. I think it was really just getting in there, doing some bench press, doing some biceps, doing some triceps. Honestly, couldn't do a pull up at that point. So wasn't mixing any of that. And I did love calisthenics, but honestly, most of the things I like, all the crazy movements I could do, I couldn't really do because I was so heavy. So I think weights is again, it doesn't have to be complicated, right? You just go in and you just do some resistance and you leave, and you just build from there, basically. So
yeah, people often make the mistake of, when they get started, they want to just do body weight training, not realizing that at the beginning, typically your body weight is the heaviest, which means it's the hardest to do the body weight training. Like, you can do, if you're overweight, even doing a body weight squat, like, that can be, for some people, that can be like, that's a lot, versus doing, a leg press where you can put the weight on the leg press to be like 30 pounds or 50 pounds. That's certainly less than your body weight. Or doing a push-up. People think a push-up is like a basic, simple exercise. Most people walking around outside cannot even do a single push-up. Yeah, so to think that like, you're just getting started, you can just do a push-up. You maybe you can, but you probably can't. But you could do a bench press with 10 pounds or 20 pounds or 30 pounds, right? Mm-hmm. And you can do that. You're strong enough to do that. So you start where you are, and then you can build up from there. There's a little bit more control. There's less skill involved, certainly, than some of like the more complicated or advanced calisthenics moves and things that you would have been doing that you wouldn't have been able to do at that time, right? But you were doing previously. So definitely there's that benefit. But then also just like the building muscle and the easier way to progress it. For people who don't already love exercise, progression is like one of the most important things for them, and seeing that constant progression. So you can see the weights go up every week. Whereas in calisthenics, it's not as linear, where, you can do a pull-up, but your pull-ups you're not going to gain one pull-up every week. You're not going to increase weights on pull-ups or something like that. Like, the progressions are less linear. So it's a little bit easier to say, okay, I did a lat pull down. I did 25 pounds this week for 10 reps. And then next week I did 25 pounds for 12 reps. And that's great. I can see that. And then, I can do 35 pounds this week, or, and then keep going that way. So pretty important, obviously, for that reason, but also just for building muscle. And like you said, just being super accessible, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
When did you start boxing then? Because at some point you started to feel good. You like the weight was coming off. Like, you started to kind of like get your confidence back, and kind of, for lack of a better term, like, Austin Powers, get your mojo back here. Yeah. And then you started feeling good. So when did the boxing kind of come back in, and when did you start to really feel like yourself again?
I think so originally, like, Peter and Anthony were boxing, right? And I just didn't do it because I just was more focused on, I think, just just doing something that was a little more easier, not like crazy. I think I started boxing probably like maybe last April. I think it's 2023 April, or was it 2024? No, 2024 April is where I started. There's something about it, like when I started it, it was like so different. Like I've never done, like literally, like I have never done boxing ever in my life. That was like the first time I've ever struck a pad, did those types of combinations, and obviously I was terrible. But it was like, there's something about it that was like, okay, this is pretty cool. And it's kind of like subconscious working out, because you're like focused on the combinations, but you are working out pretty excessively. So, I kind of fell in love with that, and I just started, doing like 1 or 2 classes a week. And, I think I kind of gone through like phases as I lost weight. So like you lose like 20 pounds or like 10 pounds. You're like, okay, I feel good. Let's start to do this and whatever. And I just started like, there's just like phases. So I changed like a lot. Like I started with the weights, right, for like 2 months. And then I lost like probably like 15 pounds and I started feeling good. And then I got, then I shifted to carnivore diet to just try it out. There was kind of like a buzz about it online. And I was like, whatever, let's just try it. Right. I mean, I've heard it drops fat, a lot of protein. So I actually tried that, and it did work for me. Like it ended up being something that was, very easy for me to follow. I didn't have any issues giving up carbs. And then from like there till like April, probably I started, I lost like a lot. I lost like 25 pounds on carnivore diet in like a couple months, or like 2.5, 3 months. And I think at that point, I started feeling like very good. And I was like, okay, like, I'm actually in decent shape again. Right. When I started the journey, I never thought I would get, to this physique. I was just trying to like not be like really out of shape and really unhealthy, because it's just not good for you. After I lost that, the carnivore, there was a lot of momentum built after, I lost that. Like, when I hit I think I was I hit like 200 pounds, and there was like a lot of momentum that built. So I think when I hit the 200 pound mark, I was like, okay, like we're here now. I'm working out on a very good basis. I'm building that relationship with everything back up in a more healthy way. The perspective is this is going to be a lifelong thing. It's not for a certain amount of time. I think like that at that 200 mark, I started feeling like, not myself, but I started feeling like, okay, I feel really good now, and I'm proud of myself, and let's just keep rolling. And then after the carnivore diet stopped, I shifted to, I would say not like hardcore carnivore, but I would shift it to basically what I'm doing now still, which is just more, I'm eating more basically, which is kind of crazy.
So what did you bring? What did you bring back in?
So I started bringing back like I wasn't eating any like fruit or any sort of like yogurts or nothing like that, even like honey, like all these like different things. And I actually still don't eat carbs Monday to Friday. Personally, this works really well for me, mainly because of my job. My job is high ticket closing. So I'm on like 45-minute sales calls like 4 or 5 times a day. And when you have carbs, like you kind of have like a crash. So I found like when I have, depending on when you eat it during the day and whatever, also the person and how bad their tolerance is for it or whatever. But I just found for my job personally, like I didn't have any crashes. My energy levels are really good, and it worked for me. Like it actually did work for me really well. On the weekends, I might have like, it's actually more if I just feel like I want it, if my body's craving it. I'll have like potatoes with dinner, which is totally fine, like amazing. You can get shredded on potatoes easily. There's something here called an arepa. It's like a corn tortilla thing. It's so good. So like I'll have that sometimes, but so I started adding.
No fruits during the week as well?
No, during the week I'll have fruits. So when I mean no carbs, I mean like no starchy carbs. Yeah, like no potatoes, rice, pasta, none of that stuff. Like I basically eat the same thing every day now, pretty much Monday to Sunday almost, unless I have something or I just want to eat more that day.
Yeah, makes sense. I mean, man, that's to some people that will sound like crazy. Like, oh my God, how can you not have potatoes during the week? Or like, also like relax. Like you're going to be you're not starving yourself because you didn't have a couple carbs. Like people, the conversation, and I'm just going to go on a little bit of a rant here.
Yeah.
But like the conversation about carbs and not restricting them has gone too far, because people very often do overeat their carbs. And yes, you need them and know they're not bad for you, but like they're so easy to overeat. Like I can eat an unlimited amount of pasta and rice.
I've seen it.
Like
I have
can
seen
just
this
keep
at family parties. Daniel can eat an unlimited amount of carbs.
I can just keep going. So to say that like, oh, like you can have it, like, yeah, you can, but it's also very easy. Now I'm good at controlling myself, like, but I can also like let it go. And like when I want to, I can just keep going. But it's never going to be like, oh, enough. I just had like, oh, I'm good. So you can definitely eat less carbs for most people here. The other fact of the matter is exactly like what you just said. Most people are in a job, not doing the same type of work, but the same, like you're sitting at a desk, like doing nothing. You're not really moving and burning a lot of calories throughout the day. You're just kind of like you need to keep your brain sharp. And so if you're someone like you, Michael, who notices that if you have starchy stuff or bigger meals even during the day or in the middle of work, and that is going to like affect your mental clarity, your mental energy, and have like these energy ups and downs, like that might be a big negative for you. And so this is why, like in general, I do this as well for myself. Like I push most of my carbs to the end of the day for that same reason, because I just feel sharper when I'm not having like big carb meals in the middle of a day. I won't have zero. I'll definitely do fruits, maybe some sourdough bread, but I'm not going to have like a plate of pasta for lunch, because I know that that's just going to make me less effective later in the day. Now, will you, what time of day, because this is the only time, and again, it depends on the schedule today and stuff for me, but like, how do you plan carbs and meals around training? Because going back to the whole intermittent fasting thing, I assume you're still doing that now. Will you also train whatever workout it is that you're doing that day, whether it be boxing or yoga or lifting or calisthenics? Will you train fasted, or will you train at the end of the day after you've eaten like lunch or whatever your first meal is?
So this is something that has shifted quite a bit, and there actually really is no difference for fat loss if you train fasted or if you train with a little bit of food in your system. There actually really is not. There's literally no difference. Like it actually is. It's, and I always thought there was, okay, if I train fasted, I'm going to lose so much more fat. Not true at all. It's very not true. So
the way it works, just to explain that science there for a second, Mikey, is when you train fasted, you will burn more fat during that workout if you're in a fasted state. But for the rest of the day after, you will burn less fat. And if you eat a meal before you go train, you'll burn relatively less fat in that workout, but more fat in the rest of the day. So the net difference is zero. And that's how like the science and, you know, whatever gets misconstrued. But yes, you're correct. It makes literally no difference.
Yeah, it really doesn't. And that was a shift for me. So, and this is something I think I think this should work for everyone, but I do think that everyone should listen to their body. I think your body does talk to you. I think your body, if you actually listen. So what I mean by that is, I mean, like it's not like a same thing every day for me. And that's like a big thing for me now is I'm not doing the same thing every day. I'm not obsessed with this. I'm like, okay, well, I feel like going on a 5K run today. I feel like having food before my workout today. I feel like, oh, I feel good today. I'm just going to go work out with no food. Right. I just like listen to my body. And that's like a big thing that really has allowed me to keep this body fat percentage and this regimen per se up for, 7 months now, is just listening to my body. Right. And so that's what I mean. So sometimes I'll work out with food. Sometimes I'll work out with no food. If it doesn't work with my schedule, I'll work out in the morning because I have too many calls in the day. Recently I've been working out more at night. I just like it better right now. I've never really been a night person, but I mean, hey, my body's telling me I like it. So just whatever, it works with food. Before that, I'll probably have like 5 eggs, and like an apple, maybe a protein bar, usually not, but that would be like my before that, and some bone broth.
Nice. That's that's a great insight, because really it speaks to the whole point of like everything can work, and it's about what works for you. So some people like training fasted, some people don't. Like really doesn't matter. If you have significant like strength and muscle building goals, it is not ideal to train fasted, and it has nothing to do with weight loss. It just has to do from like a workout performance thing. If you're going in and trying to like push weights as heavy as you can, like you are just going to do better if you have eaten something before. And that's just it is what it is. But that's separate from losing fat. But the more important thing is getting it in when you can, and not trying to follow like these hard rules of like, hey, I have to do this because, you know, so-and-so said to do that, or, you know, I always did this or whatever. It's like, yeah, you can run, you can eat, you can not eat, you can kind of do all the things as long as you check all the boxes over the day. Then it works. The challenge with that is that it works for you this way right now. And for some people that works really well as well. Some people need that structure though.
Yeah.
Some people need to be like doing the same thing. You know, they have to get their workout in at 8 a.m. or whatever time it is, because if they don't do it, like things get too chaotic. So this is also, to wrap this part up, this is also part of listening to your body and knowing who you are and how your personality is. Because some people can listen to their body and intuitively, like yourself, kind of just like go with the flow, and you figure it out and you make it all work and you fit it all in. But some people can't do that. Some people need that strict structure. And that is also part of listening to your body and knowing like, hey, if I don't like have everything in my calendar laid out, same time, same day, whatever, then it's just never going to happen. And so you got to know that about yourself as well. So that's a great point that you made there.
Yeah, I definitely agree. And I think like you also change as you change your mindset, right? So like in the beginning, when I was trying to when I was super out of shape, like I had a structure. Like I was in the gym at this amount of time, I was eating at this amount of time, and I was super like calculated with things. Cause I think at that point I was just like, okay, like this is very out of shape and I need to focus on this. It's a big part of my life. But now that I'm at a point where I'm like exceeded like all the things I even wanted to get to, now I'm just like, well, I can just move as much as I want and just listen to my body. Whatever my body feels that day, I'm going to do. And even on like literally like last weekend, I probably had like 4,500 calories on Saturday because my body was like, I golfed in the morning. I got a bunch of steps in. I was like super hungry, and my body was just like, hey man, like you just need some food. Like you need a refeed, like, you know, and the next day I woke up and I just got back to like the same thing. I didn't punish myself. I didn't say, oh, I'm just a bad person. Like, oh, now that you had one bad day, it's all over. Like, no, it's not. That's not realistic. And I know that a lot of people struggle with that because I did that for a long time. But yeah, that's, again, I think like your mindset changes as you change, I think as well.
100%. And that is a huge, huge point. Being lean, being very lean, or even like just not super lean, but like leaner than you know someone is right now, doesn't mean that you have to give up your favorite stuff for forever. Doesn't mean that you can never go out and just be like, fuck it, I'm gonna have a whole pizza. Like that, you can't do that every weekend, but like you can still do that every now and then, and you can still like more or less, you can just enjoy your life with food and with all the stuff. Like that is very much part of it. But the important thing is like it's a day and then it's over, and you don't feel any negative feelings about that. And the thing that I always say is like, you got to do this with your eyes open. Those things can't happen accidentally. You know, like, hey, I feel hungry, or I feel like I'm going to celebrate this thing, so I'm going to have some drinks, I'm going to have some good food, I'm going to have some dessert, I'm going to have this, and you know my stomach's going to hurt a little bit from that probably, but like then I'm going to be fine after. I'm not going to do this and then feel guilty about it and be like, oh, I'm an idiot, I suck, I'm bad, I'm a bad person because I ate that. No, you're not a bad person because you overate. You just overate, and then you can just get on with your life after that.
Exactly.
So, I know that you're not like huge on this stuff, but like any supplements and stuff that you were taking or that you did take that you felt like helped or kind of moved the needle at all for you?
No, I wasn't on any supplements at that point. I didn't really like get into anything, really then. Now I've been dabbling in some things and trying out different things. Mainly I'm on a couple supplements right now that I have find it has helped with, I think energy, and so they're basically like two blood flow or a blood flow supplement and like a testosterone boosting supplement is the two that I'm on right now. I've never really been big on supplements that much. Like I've even never taken creatine in my life. Creatine's extremely good for you. Yeah. I've never taken it before. Like, I don't know. I don't know. Never did. But, yeah, the two ones I'm on right now.
You probably should. Creatine has a lot of like psychological benefits as well, and not just training stuff, but like for brain health. Yeah,
I think I'm going to start, like, I want to start exploring more things like this, like even some peptides and different things like that could work. I mean, just depends on little things that I want to maybe tweak up or try. Obviously do a lot of research on them first, but I think this is a part of it too, is when you start to get in very good shape, is you start to like, I don't know, just experiment in more things. in the health side of things that are good for you that you never did before. And I think like just looking at this as like a fun thing, because it is a fun thing to do this and to explore your body, it really is. Because our bodies are pretty freaking cool. They're pretty awesome. Like if you understand like the shift and the things that change just from getting in good shape, it's pretty ridiculous. I'm going to be honest. Like my life, never mind fitness, my life has completely changed from just getting in shape. Like literally. So
2 things I want to say on that.
Yeah.
On the supplement side of things, it's very important to re-listen to what Michael just said about the supplements. Like supplements are cool. Like I like dabbling in supplements and take this and how does my body feel and what do I need and whatever. But like you did all of that without supplements. Like they are not necessary at all.
Not at all.
Right? Unless you have like some crazy major like medical deficiency in something, like that's a separate scenario. But you don't need stuff. Even creatine. Like creatine's great. Like there's pretty much no downsides to using it, but you definitely don't need it. So very important to highlight that, but also at the same time, like nothing wrong with it and cool to like dabble and experiment and see what you can do with your body. And, as long as you're safe and all that stuff.
Yeah, of course.
The second thing is about how much your life changed outside of fitness.
Yeah.
From when I started this podcast, I've always said that like, I want this podcast to be a way for people to understand that fitness can be the catalyst to improve the rest of your life, be it, any part of your life, your relationships, the way that you feel about yourself, your job, even your finances. Like I'm very much in the mindset of like, if you get in better shape, you will make more money. And I think that is a pretty clear relationship there. What are some of the other ways that you think that, you said improved your life? Like what else did it do for you? If there's like specific things you can mention, because I know it's kind of hard to specify. It helped everything, but is there any other specific things that you can think of?
I mean, everything you just said. This year has taught me that and people can argue with this, but I do not care if you get in shape, everything in your life will improve, and it's not because you look better or different things like that, but it's more because, and this is the biggest thing, is your say-do ratio is through the roof. What I mean say-do ratio is you yourself, like the relationship we have with ourselves is the longest commitment we have in this life. We have more than anyone else, right? And I think people avoid the relationship with yourself, right? Because they don't like their life or they're out of shape. They don't want to even look at themselves in the mirror and none of these things. And I think that when you get in shape, like the gym is the fairest place on the planet. What you put in is what you're going to get out. You can't like change that. There's no way around it. If you want to get in shape, you have to work out and you have to like respect yourself and you have to be disciplined. There's literally no way around it, right? It has to be earned. It's not given. And when you do get in shape, when you do get in very good shape, like the shift around just the respect for yourself, because it wasn't given, it was earned, completely changes. And when that changes, your view on things, your energy on things, like your mindset on things is much different. Because I do believe getting in good shape is actually one of the hardest things to do, especially nowadays. I do believe that. So when you accomplish that, when you build that relationship with yourself, and I think like the journey between the journey between when you're out of shape and when you get in shape is that's where everything is right there. Not when you're there. Like honestly, like nothing has happened now that I'm here. Everything happened in between, right? The relationship I built with myself, the relationship I built with food, my energy and my positivity towards things. If I had a bad day, now I can look in the mirror and I still have a six pack. Great. It's just a little thing, but it's huge, right? I still have that respect for myself on a daily basis, 24/7. So I don't know if that answered the question, but I think that's one of the bigger things.
That was a banger clip. I think I'm going to re-listen to that past 2 minutes, like 87 times in the next couple of weeks. But everything you said, I couldn't agree more. I think there's a stat. I don't know if this is like fully true, but it's like conceptually it's true that there are more millionaires in the US than people with a six pack. Yeah. I don't know, like, how do you?
I saw that.
I don't know if it's true, but like conceptually, like it's close enough that we can just like say it. But agreed, getting in shape is one of the hardest things, but it is those little things. Like just because you have a six pack, it doesn't mean you're like a better person or like above anyone else or anything like that. But like you're gonna feel better about yourself, and you have a shit day, and you're like, oh, okay, at least I like the way I look.
Yeah,
it's a thing. It's still a thing. And you like the way that you feel. You're still going to feel physically better. So like we can't underestimate that. Like looking good is one thing, but it's like a small thing. If all the benefits that you got from this whole journey was just looking better, do you think that you would have stuck through it?
No, because when you're disciplined with one thing, it's not just going to stay with that one thing, right? You build discipline towards everything else. So, and again,
agreed.
Getting in shape is the hardest thing to do. One of the hardest things to do. So.
What do you think, and we'll start to kind of wrap up here, but what do you think was the toughest part of all of this for you?
Good question. I think the toughest part was understanding and getting my brain around that this is a lifelong commitment. And even though I'm here now, like when I say lifelong commitment, I don't mean that like you're going to have to like struggle for the rest of your life. Like that's not what I mean. I mean that like it's going to take like it's an everyday thing. It's like, it obviously depends on your goals. If you are someone like myself, I have very high standards. That under 10% is a very standard for me. Right. But I just think that my mom's a great example. Like my mom's always been like in really good shape, right, for her age, but she's been doing it for 30 years, like 35 years, right, probably longer. So I think that was the hardest thing, is just understanding that like I'm not doing this till April and then I can eat whatever I want, right? I'm not doing that. I'm on a daily basis, like just trying to be as healthy as possible. And I know I'm a human being and I know I'm going to slip because that happens. Like I'm not perfect. And I think that mindset shift was probably the hardest. I think I'm still adjusting to it. Although I am where I am, although my routine's super dialed, I still have moments where I'm like, shit, like this is, I don't want to walk today. I don't want to, box today. I want to eat this, everything, like I want to drink like 7 beers. I don't know. Like, the Leafs are on, it's a crazy game. Like I want to do this. There's going to be triggers. There's going to be things that, that kind of mess with you per se. But I think just that was probably the hardest thing is just adjusting to the fact that this is something that is a lifelong thing. But it's also kind of exciting because like, look, I achieved this in like a year. Like if I really like continue, like how many more things can I achieve? Never mind fitness, other things that go along with it, right? So that's also exciting too. I do think everything is perfective, to be honest. So
yeah. It's a fun problem solving thing, right? Like, and there's going to be new challenges. Like there's as life progresses, like different things happen in your life, and so your routine is what it is now, and maybe in a year from now you'll be in a different place. You'll be like different things happen, right? And so things change, and your routine might have to change, or any number of other things might have to change, but the basic principles always stay the same of health and fitness. They're always the same. And you just have to find ways to continue to manipulate it and to make it work for you, which you've done such a good job of doing over the last year and a bit. Mm-hmm. So I mean, it really just comes down to thinking about that long-term thinking and establishing that as early as possible, as difficult as it is, but like making that promise to yourself, going back to what you said, the say-do ratio. You say like, hey, I'm going to commit to this for forever. Not this exact specific diet and training plan and whatever, but like just commit to fitness and health. Right. I'm going to commit to fitness and health for forever. And then you've got to follow through on that. So, I mean, that's the biggest thing. It's the hardest thing, to your point, but clearly the most important thing.
It is. It's a very easy skill as well as like a last maybe point here, but the say-do ratio has changed my life a lot. And if anyone wants to try this, basically start very small, write a list in a day. I'm going to do the dishes. I'm going to make my bed. I'm going to hit the gym. 3 things. Write it down. At the end of the day, check it off. Do that for a week. There is no higher confidence that you will get from yourself when your say-do ratio is 100%. Nothing. Because when you keep your word to yourself, everything else comes. Everything. And yeah, that's like my last point. But yeah.
I love that. I think there's also power in actually writing it down on a piece of paper and checking it off versus just having it on your phone. And I don't know why that is, but I found that to be true for myself and for many other people. Do you do the same?
Yes, there's something about the writing. It has to do with like learning a language. When you actually write things down and you read it, there's something about it in the brain that registers a lot easier. Probably because it's more natural, because phones are not like I don't know, they're just not part of us. They're just kind of something.
Something like that. But either way, we don't need to know why everything works. We just need to know that things work. And so, that works. So do it. Mikey, is there anything that we missed? Anything else that you wanted to talk about or like share as part of your journey or anything that you did?
I don't think so. I think we covered everything. I would maybe leave it on like a last bit of advice, as in like, I think the biggest thing about getting in shape is actually taking it easy on yourself. And that may seem weird or not common, but try and think about things differently. When you're struggling with something, or when you're not wanting to go to the gym, because there's probably going to be more days than not that you don't want to work out, or the discipline's going to be harder than not. I definitely think it's more in your favor to just change your perspective on it, because you do have a choice to think about something a certain way or not. And you're a human being. You're going to mess up, but it's okay, because there's another day and you can make another decision, and that just builds over time. So that'll be my last thing.
Love it, man. Thank you. If people who are listening feel like they're in kind of the same boat as you, or just want to bounce some ideas off you, or if by chance on an off chance want to talk about sales stuff or whatever, like, or can people reach out to you?
Yeah, absolutely.
Where can they find you?
Instagram would probably be the best place. So yeah, my Instagram's, I don't know if you'll put it in like
I'll put it in the notes, but just say it.
Yeah, it's Michael Tzemis 10. Or I think it's actually just Michael Tzemis is my username, just my full name. Profile pictures, just a picture of me with a white hat.
I'll find it. I'll find it and put it and put it in the whatever the actual handle is. But I'll put it in the show notes for everyone. But yeah, man, thank you. This was amazing. Thank you very much for being vulnerable, for being open, and for sharing your story, because it things like this help tremendously for other people, and especially on the podcast. Like, it's one thing for like, I actually said this to your dad like last week, but like, it's one thing for when someone like me, and I, like, for what it's worth, like, Michael's way more shredded than me for now. I'm going to try and catch up later this year, but it's one thing for people like me and other coaches to come on here and say fitness stuff, because like, this is our job, like, this is what we do. And it's like, it always has that connotation of like, it must be easy for you, like, this is your job. And to some degree, it's kind of true. But it's another thing when someone like yourself, who has been in fitness for a long time, but you're not, strictly speaking, a fitness professional, you're not working in fitness as in training people and all that stuff, comes and say it and explain your story, because it's a little bit more relatable. So I appreciate you taking the time to do this and for sharing with us. So thank you very much, sir. Thank you everybody else for listening. As always, make sure you contact Michael if you have anything that you want to ask him or bounce ideas off him or anything like that, or interested in sales stuff. Make sure you share the podcast, 5-star review, all those things helps this message get a long way and help more people just like yourself. Appreciate each and every one of you. Go outside, be a good person. See you next time.